be in the spirit of your campaign, that those people are out in front, that they're talking to their community, and that they are rallying the troops behind what you're doing. And especially in youth and government, oftentimes we run into volunteers that want to help, but maybe for ethical reasons. Maybe they're an elected official that can't always be asking for money, or judges can't ask for money. Another thing that they can do rather than making asks is open doors. And so having a judge or any donor set up a meeting with someone that they might not otherwise be able to ask, and you or another volunteer actually making that ask, is also a great way to involve a variety of different kinds of volunteers. So if our campaigns are volunteer-led, then they need to be staff-supported. And some things that involve staff support are creating a calendar and a plan, providing our materials, resources, and training. And training is really, really important. A lot of volunteers have not done fundraising before, or maybe if they have, they haven't done it well, or they haven't been successful. So making sure that you take the time to train your volunteers and train your staff in what is expected and how we do fundraising in the YMCA. Make sure that they know the best practices so that they can go out and be successful. Another behind-the-scenes support thing that staff will do is coordinate meetings and schedules and provide data and metrics. And that's really, really important because we want to be celebrating all of our successes. And I'll talk about some metrics, both monetary and not monetary, that you can track as you go along in your fundraising efforts. Now the picture on your screen is the donor cultivation cycle. Depending on the training that you're doing, it's going to look a little bit different. It might have some different words, but the most important thing to think about is no matter what kind of fundraising you're doing, if you're doing an event, if you're doing an annual campaign, if you're doing endowment, whatever the kind of fundraising it is, you should think about donors and your relationship with them in a cycle. So the ask is just one piece that happens once, maybe twice a year for each donor. But the rest of the year, you're doing all of these other things. The best practice and what people strive to do is have 7 touch points with donors every year. So one of those touch points is asking them for money. The other 6 are other kinds of meetings or information sharing, inviting them to events that you can do throughout the year. So that might be an annual report. It might be a thank you note from a student. It could be an event. You could invite them to help train some of your students. There's all sorts of different ways to get those touch points in. Some might be in person and some might not. But as you go through the year, that should be the goal for your donors, to keep them engaged so that they don't feel like you're just asking them for money, but really getting them closer to the mission of our YMCA and our youth and government programs. That's going to keep them involved and keep them as donors. It's going to help them feel engaged, and hopefully and potentially it will help them give more money in the future. Something else that is a best practice in terms of this donor cultivation cycle is listen first and having donor-centered fundraising. And what that means is if you're going to go and talk to someone about donating money, you really want to listen to what they're interested in. So maybe you have a proposal for them and you want them to donate $1,000 for software for a new program. And that might be where you start, but you really want to listen and see what they're interested in. Maybe that's not what they want to give money to. Maybe they want to give for something else. And rather walking away with a no, you want to walk away with more information so that you can come back to that donor with another proposal at another time or offer them something else that they might be interested in. Focusing on those closest to your organization. Something that I think is a really common thing for people to think about is to to sit down and think about all of the biggest companies in your state or in your area and say, well, we need to go ask them for money. And the reality is that the people who are closest to you are your best allies and are most likely to give. So your advisors, the teachers that help run your programs, your students and alumni, elected officials, those who already know what you're doing and are excited about what you're doing should be the first circle. They should be giving money. They should be out representing you to other places. They should be your campaign volunteers. Really get that inner circle before you start going out and asking money from other people. Your whole board, for example, should be giving before they're asking for money from others. Relationship management is really, really important. We should be, again, bringing people closer to youth and government and closer to our programs. So as we're out in the community and as our volunteers are out in the community, it's their personal relationships that are going to bring new people into our organization. But throughout the course of this donor cultivation cycle, those donors need to create relationships with our organization. So if your volunteer leaves, that donor will still have a relationship with you and with youth and government and continue to be involved. Building genuine relationships, again, this donor cultivation cycle and staying connected with people to the extent that you can, having software that helps you manage that and track your relationships, knowing who just had a baby or who just got married and sending cards, sending people cards or emails on their birthdays, and really caring about the people who you're interacting with. Again, rather than just asking them for money once a year, is going to bring them closer to you and closer to your cause. I'm going to skip down to segmenting your audience. And that's really important because we have lists of thousands of people who we could be asking for money. If you've already started asking for money, maybe you've got a few hundred donors and maybe 25 of them give more than $1,000 and maybe 50 of them give less than $25. You want to have different strategies for each group of people. It costs a lot less money and a lot less time and resources to ask people to renew their gifts. So focusing on those who already give and who give it at higher levels, you're going to want to have in-person meetings with them. You might communicate with them more, invite them to an event, whereas going out and getting a new donor or the work that you might do to keep a $25 gift might look a little bit different. Maybe they'll get a letter and an email and a phone call rather than an in-person meeting. So segment your gifts. To the extent that you can, the more face-to-face asks, the better. It is really popular to do things on email and to have fundraising web pages, and that's all good for a certain segment of donors. The reality is that people don't give $500 or $1,000 gifts online. They want to meet with somebody, they want to talk to you, they want to see your students in action, they want to come to an event. So ask for that money in person, just like you would want to be asked for your money in person rather than on the phone. People give more and more often when they're asked face-to-face. Metrics are another really important thing, and this is from a perspective of annual campaign, but really throughout anything you can use metrics in events, in endowment, and any other appeal you might be doing. And it's really important to have a variety of different kinds of metrics, and I'll show you some on the next slide. Obviously, having an overall goal, we want to raise $100,000 this year is really important. If that is the only goal or metric that you set, then all of your success and all of your failure is going to be measured by that one goal, and when you turn around next year to do the same thing, you're not going to know what to do differently. So having an overall goal is really important, but having additional goals that you can track from year to year as well as throughout your campaign so that you can make adjustments as you go. is really important. Having both monetary goals and non-monetary goals. So a monetary goal might be raising $60,000 by the end of October. A non-monetary goal would be having a face-to-face meeting with at least 6 people by the end of the year. Tracking and reporting throughout the campaign, so tracking these goals as you go and letting people know how they're doing. I've had donors or campaigners let me know that they've campaigned for other organizations and they've sent out letters and they've made phone calls and they've never found out how much money they actually raised. And they don't, that's not something that they want to do again. It doesn't make them feel invested and it doesn't help them build relationships. So making sure that you have volunteers who are willing to rally the troops throughout the campaign, checking in with your campaigners, letting them know how they're doing and how the group is doing overall. And then also the ability to adjust if you're not on your way to meeting a specific goal, you can make some adjustments throughout the campaign. And celebrate your accomplishments. Maybe in the end you don't make your overall goal, but you had more meetings than you thought you would, and you got more alumni gifts than you thought you would, and you engaged people in new and different ways. It's important to celebrate those accomplishments as you go in a real and genuine way so that your volunteers feel successful and want to come back and volunteer for you again, and also so that you know what you've done well that you want to carry on and grow in the years to come. A couple of notes of caution for those who are starting new programs is, again, big gifts are really, it's really easy to say we just want to go out and get, you know, a few $5,000 or $20,000 gifts, and that's great, and grants are great, but oftentimes bigger gifts have strings attached, and it also, if you have a $25,000 gift that you're relying on as a quarter of your $100,000 campaign, when that gift goes away unexpectedly, it's going to be a lot harder to make it up. It's also, there's also more opportunity for relationship building with smaller gifts. So if you have 100 people giving small gifts rather than one person giving a large gift, you have that many more people engaged in your organization. And I don't say that to say that big gifts are wrong or that we don't accept them, but it's just something to note and be aware of. Reliance on any one method of communication, you want to be wary of. Again, everybody likes face-to-face. Some people are really comfortable giving online. Some people are not comfortable giving online. Some people check their mail. Some people don't. So make sure that you're doing a variety of kinds of conversations and communications with people. And then the last note of caution I want to share is only promise what you can deliver, and that's really, really important. We want to be advocates for our program, but we also want to make sure that people's money is spent how they want it spent. So if you have the ability to delineate where money goes, for example, a donor might want to give $10,000 to start a new youth legislature delegation somewhere, and that's great if you can guarantee that that money is going to go to that community to start a youth and government delegation somewhere. And if not, then it's important that you let that donor know that and come up with another project or other ideas. Campaign plan. This is an example of some of the things that have been in our campaign plans over the years. It's really important to have a calendar with all of those 7 touch points that you want throughout the year, to plan team meetings for your campaign coordinators and your leadership team, and to have an end. Annual campaigns have got to have an end. It's really common and easy for them to just drag out. We haven't met our goal, so we'll just extend it by another few weeks. But people need to know when they're signing up what they're signing up for and when they're done. And if we haven't met the goal and we have some more cleanup and some more fundraising to do, then that's the work of a few staff and a few key volunteers. Make sure in your plan you have a purpose, and that's both raising money and bringing people closer to your YMCA. And then it lays out some very specific strategies. Rather than just saying we're going to go out and raise $100,000, your campaign plan needs to lay out how you're going to do that. We are going to really focus on our renewal rate this year. We're going to implement a matching fund for those who renew at higher levels than they did last year, perhaps. We want to increase our number of campaigners and our alumni gifts. And those are just a few strategies that you might lay out. I think focusing on 3 or 4 strategies each year is important so that you and your volunteers aren't overwhelmed with new pieces of the puzzle, but to really focus on a couple of things that you want to improve from the year before that you want to start. Some other strategies might be having an event. It might be more in-person asks. You might ask for monthly pledges, and better storytelling could all be some strategies that you would include in your campaign plan. And then with every strategy, you want to make sure and have an indicator so that you know along the way and at the end, were you successful in carrying out that strategy. So your campaign goal, of course, is an indicator of success. Your renewal rate, how many people gave last year that also gave this year. The number of new gifts, the number of touch points, percent of board and staff giving. 100% of your board should give, and the number of overall gifts. So there's a combination of monetary and not monetary of different things that you can measure, and there are a huge number of things that you can measure throughout the campaign. My message to you is that you should be measuring something more than your overall goal. So again, you can look back and say, this is what we did well, and celebrate it, and this is what didn't go well. We're going to scrap that, or we're going to do it better next year. And then this box that just showed up on the screen there is another metric and way to think about your gifts. So you might have a goal of $100,000, or this one ends up at $150,000, and how many gifts do you need to get in each range? And this is something you can track throughout the campaign and say, well, actually, you know, we only ended up getting 5 gifts at $1,500, so we need to make that up somewhere, or who else can we go to get that money? But it's another way to stratify your strategies between different levels of donors, and a way for you to think about how to bring in your overall goal. Events. I am not a huge fan of events, and I will put it out there and let you know that. And the reason is because so many events don't bring people closer to our mission and our cause, and events are also very resource heavy. That said, they're super fun, and staff love putting on events, and volunteers love putting on events. In order to run them well as part of a fundraising program, they need to be well planned, well manned, and bring people closer to our mission. So bake sales are not good YMCA events. They don't bring people closer to our mission. They don't fit into our mission and goals of our organization, and they don't raise very much money. They're not very effective. So in terms of connecting people to your mission, there's all kinds of different events that the subject of the event can draw people closer to your mission. There are also ways to bring people closer to your mission by having a golf tournament or a trivia night. Just by showing a video, by seating students throughout the room at an event, by having a very strategic way to tell stories or offer people a gift at the end that is going to remind them of our mission or draw them closer to our mission. You can do very specific things in any event that is going to do that. So no matter what kind of event, it should bring people closer to our mission. It needs to draw the right crowd. So having a big event is great, but if nobody has money or nobody has connections, then it won't be a successful event. So make sure that you're inviting the right people to your event. It needs to be well planned, obviously, and planning from the very beginning. So what does the invitation look like? Who is on the invitation list? What do people see when they walk in the door? who is greeting them, what is their experience like from start to finish, is going to really make an impact on how much money you can raise at an event and how much closer people come to your organization and how well run they think your organization is. Using resources efficiently. So again, events are very resource intensive. So the mission and the goals have to be very well laid out so that you know if it's a successful event. Know how much you're spending and how much time your staff is spending on any given event before you can say whether or not it was a successful event. Some event ideas from different folks are house parties, which are very small events where a volunteer might invite 5 or 6 couples for dinner and do just a really quick pitch about your program and invite them to join in supporting youth and government. Auctions, trivia night, Randall does a great sponsor your seat, golf tournaments, banquets, family feud have all been events that youth and government programs have run. The list could go on, and again, the key to any of these is bringing people closer to youth and government and making sure that the event in itself isn't the end goal, but it's a vehicle to get to your goal of raising money and bringing people closer to youth and government. Some other fundraising opportunities that we're not going to talk about right now, some other kinds of appeals are in-kind contributions. To make in-kind contributions successful, it needs to be something that's in your budget that people are going to give to offset your budget. Grants, endowment and planned giving and sponsorships are all things that could be included into your fundraising portfolio throughout the year. I really think planned giving and endowment is something that we as an organization don't do enough of, and is really what sets us up for success in the long term. So, but again, this is a very short webinar, so we're not going to talk about those right now. I'm happy to talk about any of these things with anyone afterwards. Some obstacles to overcome. What holds us back from successful fundraising? The top 4 obstacles that I've heard in trainings and from volunteers and staff, number 1 is typically fear of asking for money. Oftentimes we feel like we are putting someone out by asking for money, and I want to bring it back to that first slide about giving people an opportunity. It truly, truly is an opportunity to be invested and part of our organization. So get over your fear. It's part of what we do in the YMCA, and we just need to get over it, and we need to practice and truly believe that we are asking people to join something that is important and be part of our cause. I've never had anyone be mad at me for asking for money. I've definitely heard no a lot. But in general, even when I hear no, I hear thank you for offering me this opportunity to be involved. A lack of time is often something that holds us back, and an absence of structure. So that goes back to this is a program, and if we want to do it well, we need to plan it well and resource it well. Something else that comes up specifically in our programs, because we are statewide, are having turf wars with other YMCAs. And sometimes that's real, and sometimes it's not, and it's something that we are imagining or imagine might happen. And to overcome that, what I found is communicating really well with our local YMCAs. And some states have great relationships with otherwise, and some don't have as good of those relationships. But I think communicating with them not only will help mitigate some of those turf wars between youth and government and other programs, or civic education programs, or nonprofit programs in general in your state, is communicating and making sure that we're helping other programs, supporting them, and communicating what we're doing, why we're doing it, where the money is going. And we have nothing but really great relationships with our local Ys, and I talk to the CEOs a lot about who I'm contacting, which ones of their donors I'm contacting, and what that ask is going to look like so that they know and can support it. And the last thing I'm going to talk about quickly before I ask Ben to step in is communication. And I'm not going to talk a lot about communication. There's all sorts of different ways that you can communicate with your donors, but have a story and tell it well is really the bottom line. Tell it in a variety of ways and be simple and consistent. So make sure that you're training your volunteers to talk about youth and government as a mission-driven program, not just a training ground for legislators and lobbyists, that they know how to talk about our programs from the mission standpoint and how to convey impacts. And how they do that is going to be in a variety of different ways, obviously videos and brochures and student testimonials and all of the ways that we communicate the impact that we do. But make sure that your volunteers are really trained and know how to do that. I also think it's easy to use materials in place of relationship. And so be aware of that if you take a brochure to a meeting or you send someone a brochure via email, don't expect them to read it or to understand it or to agree with whatever is in it. It should be a set piece, as I have on here. It shouldn't be the whole play. So sending somebody a brochure shouldn't be in place of calling them on the phone and letting them know about your program or asking them for money or meeting with them to do so. And with that, I didn't ask Randall how to do this before, but Ben Reno-Weber is going to share a little bit about what they've been doing and his perspectives on fundraising. So Randall, I assume I go over here to change the presenter, and Ben should be the presenter. Ben, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, brilliant. So wait, you had that infographic that I loved up on yours. All right, I'll pull it up on mine. So, I mean, I think that you guys actually on this call, I didn't know who was going to be on the call. I presumed it was going to be people who were less experienced at fundraising than we were. But as it turns out, the people on the call actually probably know a lot more about this than I do. So I will just be super brief. The one thing that we've learned starting up with this is just do it. Like we raised out of random people, non-board in the community last year, $15,000, and we're super excited about it. But what we did do in the process of starting it was get momentum, get those people who gave to start talking to other people, and we got our board giving to go way up because we dove in and just tried it. So the other, I mean, let's see, pull up the thing that we did. Yeah, I think the thing that I would like us to start doing is really to be sharing campaigns, so that essentially this coming year, is going to be a little weird for us because it's our 125th anniversary as a Y. But in future years, I'm just going to steal whatever Orville put together for this year, and you guys go ahead and steal the one that Derek put together for us from last year. And we should just have a campaign bank that we go to, because we are the people that do this with one another. So that's pretty much all I've got. I mean, we really, this year, started from nothing. And our board giving doubled because we started asking outside of our board for the first time. All of a sudden, the other Ys, where we overlapped their service area, started actually paying attention to us, and not in a bad way, because I instantly, to address something that Sarah said earlier, rolled over and said, I will check all of my donors against you, and if it's more than $1,000, it's yours. I will never go after it. If it is less than $1,000, you don't really care anyway. And all of the Ys in our service area have been down for that. So that's really all I have. If anyone's got thoughts or questions, I am happy to talk more about exactly how we started and how we're approaching our alumni and the contactathons we are doing right now.
Okay. Tell us more about that.
Ben, did you hear that?
Oh, sorry.
What was the last thing that you said?
Oh, I said we're doing a series of contactathons right now. So what we are doing is we have taken the contact information that we have, which is largely out of date, but it gives us something. And we are reaching out to those people through Facebook, through LinkedIn, and we're doing it by gathering a bunch of our college kids in a room, feeding them pizza, and saying, all right, guys, let's go try and contact these people and update their contact information. And far we've run one. We have 4 more coming over the next 3 weeks. And they were super fun when we did it. The people loved to be contacted. They loved that we had a young person doing it. And what I hope is that that will feed us into the annual campaign. We're also asking each of those people, hey, who else do you remember from when you were in the program and are you in contact with? And so they are making outreaches for us. And at this point, we're just trying to collect information. We also have been using a service called Touchpoint. So when we have old data, we are send whatever we've got to them, and if they can do something, charge us, I think, 75 cents per name that they come back with current contact information for, and then we can at least try and contact them there. They sometimes can get email addresses, but they're pretty good about mailing addresses and pretty reasonable about phone numbers. And they only charge you if they think they found a person. So ideally, we are going to go back through our old bill books and feed people in that way. We think we'll get a pretty low hit rate, but it's more than what we've got right now.
All right.
Hey, Ben, can you send out the information for Touchpoint, Mrs. Randall?
Yep, sure will.
Thanks, Ben. Can you switch the presenter back to me, Ben?
Done.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So the last thing that I wanted to share with everyone is some resources. I knew that Ben was starting fundraising because I saw him at a NIDO conference, which is the, I don't even remember, the National Association, it's the National YMCA. And they have an annual conference that is phenomenal. I've been to a couple, and Ben and I were at one together, and it really is just a phenomenal conference. There are workshops and things by people from around the world that focus on anywhere from capital campaign to endowment and planned giving to starting your annual campaign and events. It just runs the gamut, and it is a very, very useful tool if you are looking at going. I've brought volunteers each year, and that's been really helpful for building our volunteer-led campaign. Another great resource is YMCA Exchange. The Green Book, if you go under financial development, is great. I would say that the Red Book is a bit out of date and a little hard to get through, but the Green Book is great. They also have best practices and templates, and again, these aren't best practices that only the YMCA uses. This is best practices nationwide. This is what is done by everyone around the country. And another non-YMCA resource that I have found really useful is Benevon, and it is just another training resource. They have videos and workshops online. They have seminars that they do around the country, and it's just kind of a different spin on setting up fundraising. It's run by a woman in Seattle here who started fundraising at a private school. But those are 3 resources that I have found really, really useful. There are a lot out there, and if anybody wants those, I'm happy to share them, of course. So back to our top 5, what to remember out of our workshop today is use best practices. They're out there and they work. Think of fundraising as a program, just like you would any other program. Plan it and man it well. Donating money is an opportunity to get involved, and some people will take that opportunity over other opportunities you might offer them for volunteer service. Even if they don't take it, they will welcome the opportunity to be part of our mission. And fundraising activities, just like anything else we do in our organization, should bring people closer to youth and government and be in line with our mission. And the number 1 thing to remember is ask. Just like Ben said, get out there and do it. If you ask, you're going to make more money than if you didn't. And now we have time for questions. Does anyone have any questions? I see something in the box over here. There is a former youth governor who works for YUSA in the development department, says Suzanne, and he would be a great resource. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Ben, for chiming in and sharing your experience in Kentucky. And I'll stay on for a few minutes if anybody has questions. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks,
Doing
Ben.
this. You're awesome.
Great presentation. Thank you, folks.
Yeah.
And all losers who are listening to the recording, you missed the live one.
Yes. Thanks, Sarah. It's awesome.